Well, the greatest thing about this show is having all the successful people on the show. And our guest today, I don't think you get much more higher on the mountaintop. He's kind of the big king on top of the mountain of the lending world, Mr. Brian Decker. Welcome, buddy.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate being here.
Yeah. So I've heard of you for years, and we sell a lot of real estate in this area. You do the lending loan side and stuff like that. I do the houses and stuff. But we've never crossed paths, and so here we are in the studio today. So, man, good to meet you finally.
You too. I know. I was going to say it's you were one of the original cool branding entrepreneurs as well.
Thanks, man.
I remember seeing it. I was like, oh, that's a catchy little phrase. Yeah. I was like, people always would joke around when I was starting to do like the mortgage guy, like, I don't know, 8 years ago. And I was like, I did it not because it was like some really like brand new concept. It was just like people would just always say, hey, call my mortgage guy. And I was like, well, it's a lot easier them saying that than, some other phrase that I would rather not them say. You're going to like, carve them where you want. So it's like, well, they're going to say, well, my realtor, like, he always wore a red tie. He has a shaved head. So you just owned it up. And I was like, I like that, man.
Just owned it. Well, and because when you say your name, people forget the name within minutes or within seconds, really, right? Yeah. So bald guy, red tie, it's a visual that sticks in people's minds. And so the mortgage guy, because you're right, when your people are out at dinner and stuff like that, it's, hey, there's my mortgage guy.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but man, so speaking of mortgages, how did you get into the mortgage business? Because it's been an interesting couple decades here. So tell us the backstory.
So I mean, back in the day, I was in college, and this is back in like 2003. It was my senior year in college, and I went to school to become a CPA. Okay, so my grandfather is an accountant. My dad worked in finance, and so I always wanted to have a secure job with if I worked real hard, I could make partner one day.
Right.
And so I went to Bible University, accounting degree, get out of college, and my two idiot roommates, who both of them, like, I tutored in basic math, got into the mortgage world. And I went and worked at an accounting job, and we shared a house, and within, 45 days of them being in the mortgage world, one of them came home with a Chrysler 300 with 24-inch wheels on it, and the other one came home with an Escalade that he put Lamborghini doors on.
Oh,
and I was like,
ghetto fabulous.
Well, I was like, what are you guys doing? And they're like, dude, we're killing it in mortgage. We're killing it. And I was like, well, how much you guys making? And they had told me at the time, and I was like, no, you guys aren't. That's half my salary annually, and you're making that monthly. And I know you guys. You guys don't even know basic math, like at all. And so I went to my dad, and I'm like, Dad, I think I want to do mortgages. He was like, it's a bubble. It's a bubble. This is like 04. He's like, that's gonna fizzle out in 2 years, and you're gonna be homeless. But I don't think you should do it. It's just a gimmick right now. You'll see, it's a gimmick. I was like, okay, whatever. So I stuck and did accounting for a little bit longer, maybe another couple months, and I was just like, this is so boring. I was like, this is just so boring. Like, I love numbers. I've always thought in numbers. My brain always works in that way. But at the same time, I loved the interaction with people, right? And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to give this a try. So, I ended up going and leaving accounting and worked with a buddy of mine who was an engineer, and we were doing like construction stuff. So I was, running the business side of it out here in Temecula, and we were doing like designing people's backyards and doing all this. And, I was like, I'm not going to go into mortgage. I'll listen to my dad. I'll start my own business. I need to do something with that. Well, I ended up doing it for a little bit, and was just like, I don't like to work outside. Like, I don't like, let's call it. I'm not.
You have laptop hands.
Yeah, that's what I always say. I was like, the only calluses are for like my indoor workouts, so my personal trainers that make it through my gloves, And so I didn't like that after a while, and ended up selling the company and got just enough money to pay off the debt it took to start the company. So I was back at square one. I was like 23. So my buddy calls me up, he was actually a rather smart friend from college. And he's like, hey, man, I got into mortgage. I think you should look at getting into it, man. I think you'd be really good at it. I'm like, all right, cool. Well, I'll come work for you guys. And I was like, I don't even know what I didn't even know there was a T in mortgage, at the time. I was like, let alone anything else, I was like, and so I was like, okay. So I literally went and got that book, like, How to Do Mortgages for Dummies. Like, do you remember the ones that were the yellow and black checkers, right?
Yep.
So I read it and I learned it. And anyways, so I ended up getting in the industry in like 2005. and just started getting my way in the industry. I was starting to do pretty good, and then 2008 happens, right? And so for those, like, you know, in our world, I remember I had like finally like 20 loans in escrow. I was like, yes, I'm going to do so good. And then you start getting all those emails, bank close, bank close, bank close, bank close. And I was just like, no. And so I was like, okay, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. Well, banks are closing. So I went in and I ended up getting hired to consult with a law firm and help them determine if they should take a short sale on their note or not, right? So big commercials, so let's say big shopping centers. One of my clients I had done a loan for, I was like, hey, come work with me. I want you to look at what banks are hiring us to look and say, hey, here's our shopping center. How much in rents that shopping center is bringing in. Help us make the determination is if how much should we foreclose or take a short payoff on the note. You know, help us make that decision, prepare these packages. So it was really kind of cool because that really taught me a lot about the game because it taught me the backside of things. Like, okay, from the bank's perspective, when it makes sense or not, right? And so did that for about a year. And then I was just like, okay, you know, I've always been one of those believers when everybody's doing something, you probably shouldn't do it. And when nobody's doing something, you should probably do it, right? And so I'm like, everybody just got out of the mortgage game, you know? And I was like, I'm gonna try to get into the mortgage game again right now, you know? And so that was the beginning of 2009. I literally went, I was kind of partying and having a good time in Orange County. I was like 25 or 26 and at that time, and I was like, you know, I need to get away from this like credit card millionaire world and moved down to a 1-bedroom apartment down in San Diego, kind of over by Chargers old stadium, Qualcomm Stadium. Took my credit card, put $40,000 of direct mail on my credit card. Got a little because I knew from being in the industry game, like back in the day, you would mail people offers for refinances, right? And I was like, you know, I don't get any of those offers anymore in the mail. You know, a lot of people aren't doing that. I was wondering if I could do it. And then that was like, I don't know, maybe July of 2009. And I was like, I got to get paid pretty quick because I got a $40,000 Amex bill and I don't have any money to pay it.
That's jumping in the deep end right there, buddy.
And I was just like, I was like, I just had this unbelievable amount of confidence in myself, which was not warranted at all, you know, in any way, shape, or form. And then December of that year came around. So it was like I was making the minimum payment. December of that year came around and I closed 52 loans in the month of December. And then I just spent the next year and a half, just me and 2 assistants just grinding down in San Diego, and ended up closing $100 million over the next 12 months. And just
incredible.
And then just little by little, just kept growing it and growing it and growing it and growing it. And then 2012 hit, and was doing, I think almost hit 200 million that year. And then I was like, you know what? I need to start getting into purchases. I was doing all refinances. And I was like, if there's one thing I remember all my mentors telling me is purchases are annuities, refinances come and go, because I don't care how good of a loan officer you are. If interest rates jump 2%, nobody needs to refinance. Mm-hmm. I mean, you do you're going to get your divorces that need to do cash out, or somebody needs to pull out money for college, but it's such a small percentage of the population. Right. So I was just moved to Orange County, had just met my wife. We were just dating at the time, and I was like, I want to have a family and I want to get something more stable. So I'm going to start, looking at potentially getting into purchases. And I was like, let's see, where do we want to live? My parents live in Temecula. I grew up in Temecula. I was like, maybe we'll think about moving back there once we have kids. And so I was like, all right, well, I'm going to just reach out on Zillow. I was, and find a realtor because I want to buy a property out there, for investment property out there. And reached out through Zillow, and the agent happened to be Lisa Force on Zillow. And so her, this was like 2013. So her nephew, Ryan Phillips, was my agent. So I called him and told him what I was looking for. And then 3 days later, he calls me up and he's like, hey, I had a VA deal fall out of escrow. He's like, I think it'd be a great property. It's, we can buy it. I got sales prices $20,000 less than the VA appraisal. And I was like, yeah, VA appraisals are really conservative too. So this is awesome. he's like, do you want to, I think it'd be a great rental property. It was over in Red Hawk. And I was like, okay, how much is it? And he's like, it's whatever, it's $300,000. You know, at the time back when you could buy houses for $300,000.
Yeah.
Remember
Miss
that?
those days.
Yeah.
Miss it. Yeah.
4-bedroom, 3-bath for $300,000.
Where's the time machine, man?
Gosh, I know, I should have bought more.
Yeah.
You know, and I was like, okay, send me over the details. And he's like, okay. I was like, send me over the appraisal. I looked at it, called him back. I was like, all right, cool. 10-day cash offer and I'll close on it. He's like, okay, cool, whatever, writes the offer. We close on the deal. I go and meet him or whatever at the property. And he's like, what do you do, by the way? He was like, you didn't even come out. You don't seem that old to, you know, have bought a house for $300,000 cash or whatever. And I was just like, oh, you know, I'm in the mortgage side of things. He's like, really? He goes, you know, the guy we're using right now isn't that good. He's like, what do you do? And I was like, I'm in Orange County at the time. He's like, would you ever consider coming in and sitting down with my aunt and uncle or whatever? And I was like, yeah, sure. You know, why not? Like, I didn't know anything about it. I was
Just
busy.
the number one team.
Yeah.
Awesome.
You know, and I honestly wasn't looking for any business because I was doing really well in Orange County. I was living in Orange
busy.
County, and I like, you know, and honestly, I never really wanted to come back to Temecula because I grew up here, and the Temecula when I moved away in 2000 was not the Temecula
Right.
of today.
Yeah.
You know, we got the mall here. In
Oh,
2000.
I know.
I was like, whoa, we got Macy's.
We got Chick-fil-A.
Yeah. You know, and I was just like, okay. So I ended up going and meeting with them and sitting down with them and just, you know, fell in love with them as they were just an awesome couple and
Yeah.
ended up starting to do their loans. And then little by little, I think it's just because my background was an accountant. So most people that are in the loan side of things, they're sales and we try to learn math and accounting. Like
Yeah.
I knew tax, like I had prepared tax returns. Like I thought, like that is what I lived, you know, that's what I did. And so learning the sales side of it wasn't hard for me because I didn't have to sell anything. I could just teach people because I knew it rather than a loan officer. Most of them, not everyone, there's lots of great ones out there, but they have to try to learn something. It's so hard to learn yourself and then teach somebody to do it, right?
Yeah.
You know, and so just little by little, it just kind of kept growing and growing and growing and growing. You know, because I just had this obsession with like every deal being the best at it, right? Like not even like the closing. It's just I wanted that client afterwards to like be like, dude, these guys knocked it out of the park. Like that's, and so and then I had a really, really bad, awesome, amazing team. I mean, they're just a bunch of badasses on my team that these people just grew around. And so they just all kind of had that thing. And then little by little, my competitors in the Valley started coming to work for me, or work with me, you know, and now like my two, I guess, biggest competitors in the Valley were Taylor Loop and Justin Grable were my two biggest competitors, you know, technically at the time, but I was always really amicable with everybody. You know, if they wanted to know something, how I did it, I would always just share. I mean, I've just always been, you know, person of abundance. There's plenty to go around, you know what I mean? There's no reason. And I have a chance of getting to learn from the top guys in the country. They became good friends of mine from just, you know, different events and things. And so we would just all share, you know? And so then Taylor came and started working with me, and then we collaborated on stuff, and now dude's gonna do like 100 million this year. And then Justin came and started working with us, and we kind of taught him all of our systems, and he's gonna do like 70 million this year.
Wow.
And now it's kind of really rad because, you know, now with us owning our own company and it just being that culture, it's like, it's amazing what culture will do to people. Because when you don't like have that, when you're spending 14 hours of your day in a place that doesn't feel like your home and family, you're not going to rise to the biggest levels, you know? And then here it is today.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's so awesome.
It's crazy,
And his
right?
office is so beyond beautiful. It's almost as pretty as him and his wife and his children.
Yeah, it's funny is when randomly enough, it was so funny. Like, so Ashley Cooper texted me a couple, like, I don't know, last week, and she was like, "Hey, Brian," she's like, "Who designed your office?" She's like, "We're the owner of our company wants to like do an office, you know, and I'd love to give him your designer." I was like, "It was me." And she was like, "Haha, very funny." I'm like, "No, it was me." She's like, "Are you serious?" And I was like, "Oh, I can't do the knick-knack stuff, but like, I have that. I love that design aspect." I was like, I have no problem admitting being like, yeah, I looked on Pinterest. I looked on House. Like, you know, I can recreate the wheel, you know? And so then her boss came through and he like walked it last week or whatever, or not boss, whoever owns the company or whatever walked through. And he's like, I'm really surprised this was a male's eye. I was like, yep, I'm not there's anything wrong with being gay, but I'm straight as an arrow, I enjoy doing it, 'Cause that's what I wanted to give people a cool place, there's a reason why you built your place, why you built it, right?
Yes,
People want to work somewhere that's cool, right?
Yeah,
They want to, you have to make them want to be there. And the way you do that is by creating an environment that they flourish in, you know? So we have a bar, we have the automated robot coffee machine. Everybody has these awesome views. You do it for a reason because people will perform to the levels that their environment allows. It's like the reason why I've always been a car nut, right? Like I don't have any vices in terms of gambling. I don't spend a bunch of money on random clothes. I'm a car guy. I love cars. Why? Because if I get into one of my nice cars to drive on the weekend, when I get in that, I was like, you got to earn driving this car. You better work your butt off to earn driving this automobile. You're not going to be the guy that, leases a car and basically is barely making his lease payment a month because you want people to think that you can afford to drive this nice car. No, for me, it's like, if I'm going to buy a nice car, it's going to be paid for in cash. I'm going to get in that car and I'm going to be like, you better work your butt off to deserve driving this because otherwise, like, you don't deserve to drive it, right? And I think you rise to that environment and that pressure you put on yourself,
Yep. Isn't he fun?
I talk a lot.
I think I asked one question so far, and we're 20 minutes in.
Yeah, exactly right. I know.
Well, so where does that drive and ambition come from? Is that a natural DNA thing? Is it were your parents like that? I know you kind of alluded to your father and grandfather kind of being.
They were hustlers.
Yeah.
It was ingrained in my blood. I feel it was. I'm a firm believer that it is, in that sense, to some people, it's nurture more than nature. Because I watched my dad as a kid. Every morning, I remember getting up on the weekends, and my dad had already been up, and it was like 6:30. My dad had already been up since 3 o'clock in the morning, and he worked in the warehouse at a headwear company. And on the weekends, he took a bunch of hats home and would use these like old school like screen print like presses and put patches on them. And then him and my mom would go sell them at the swap meet on the weekends, right? So my mom could stay home with us, right? So like he did all that and then worked on the weekend. So I just always saw him getting up, and working while everybody else was still asleep. And I just saw that. And then my grandfather, he worked in downtown LA, but they lived in Orange County because he didn't want to raise his kids in like downtown LA. And so he left for work every morning at 3:30 in the morning. So I remember him always just telling me stories about, just all the different things he saw in downtown LA and how crazy it is at 4 in the morning driving through downtown LA, and things like that. And this is like in the late 80s and early 90s and stuff at the time. And so there wasn't any other option. It was just like, that's what guys did, right? There was no, and my dad's brother was a physician and he worked super hard and it was just always around me as that. And it was never, it's not like my dad made a bunch of money. I think people a lot of times think of success in a monetary standpoint. I think in my mind, success is somebody that just works hard and rises above where their slot was in life, right? If somebody's slot was here and they rose up here, that's being successful. If you're given your slot at, hey, I'm born as a millionaire and you end up a millionaire, well, you didn't do anything. You stayed stagnant. You just didn't lose what you were given,
right?
And so, but it's also kind of, as my wife always jokes around, but it's a really good thing, but it's also can be a problem because it's an obsession. I can't turn it off.
Well, so let's switch gears into that because you are a family man. You are married with 2 kids, and life balance in this industry is difficult to come by. So where are you at on that scale, bud?
Not very good.
At least you're honest.
Yeah, it's one of those things. My wife is a rock star with it because she runs that house. I'll be honest. I don't take my kids to school in the morning.
You sleep there.
Yeah, I get up, every day at 4:30 in the morning, and I go work out at the gym, get to the office by 6:30. She gets the kids ready. I mean, they're 3 and 5, so, it's a lot. It's not like they're 13 and 15 and can get themselves ready. So she gets them ready, takes them to school. She's the room mom at my daughter's thing. She's the booster mom at my daughter's dance. She does all of that. which allows me to, honestly, I don't do, like, I'm the first to admit, like, I don't do much at home.
Right.
You know, like, I come home and I'm home by 6:30 and I am a really, really, really good dad. The thing that's been hard for me, and I started actually reading a book, and, you know, I was just telling you know, Susan about it just kind of before this, just randomly. And so my big personal thing in my balance is I've gotten being a good businessman down, and I've gotten being an attentive and good father down. Those are both natural to me. Being a good husband isn't something that naturally comes to me, right? It just doesn't. And I'm not using it as an excuse. It's just I'm always thinking about my next venture, what I'm doing here, and I many times take for granted, you know, that it's like you end up dating your wife, you court your wife, you get her to be your wife, and then you go on autopilot, right? You know, and it's, I think we're...
You closed escrow, and now you move on to the next one. Yeah.
You know, and you live in your house, right? And you don't want to be... And so my big thing that I mean, anytime you know, become successful or anything in an industry, you draw unneeded attention, you draw haters, and I've put my wife through a lot with a lot of that, and my wife is not the type of person that cares about that. That's why I went after my wife so hard, because when we met, I was already doing very well for myself. It wasn't, you know, and so for me, I loved the fact that she just didn't care about any of that. She's from a blue collar family in Texas, and she doesn't care about that. Her thing is she would rather have quality time over a Ferrari. Like, she just doesn't care about that. Like, that just, she literally doesn't care about it at all. She doesn't even really, like, she wouldn't even want a Ferrari. You know, she'd be like, I don't like all these people worrying about my car. So for me, that was really attractive, you know, because I was just like, okay, cool. It's nice to know that this person is with me for me, you know. And so I have had to learn to stop, pause, and, like, realize all the cool things she does for me, right? Yeah. Like, because I think it's probably really hard being my wife, because when we go places, because it's a lot of industry events, they're like, oh, that's Brian's wife. It's not, that's Allison. Well, now with her being a lot more involved with my own company now, like, she's come into her own and really helped me on a lot of things. But I've had to kind of take a moment and be like, okay, let's think here. You need to make sure you're taking your wife on dates. It's not that I don't want to take her on dates. I love taking my wife on dates, but life gets so busy, and I feel with 2 little kids, they sometimes need me more, or my work needs me more, and she's more self-sustaining, that she gets put into the back picture. So that for me is where I've been working, you know, on that balance, you know. And I mean, I don't think anybody has it figured out. It's just a constant work in progress.
It's a work in progress.
What's the book you're reading?
It's called Date My Wife. It's freaking awesome. So I literally been trying to read, not just listen to audiobooks more. So I read like 10 pages every morning, and it's a really brilliant book the way he did it, and it's religious based in the fact it's a Christian book, but it was a New York Times bestseller. So it wasn't just like, it's not just for people that you have to be a believer to read this book. It's you know, it's from a more of just a secular standpoint, and his whole thought process is the fact of is like, as a wife, or you are as a guy, you're supposed to guard, protect, and like nurture your wife. And if you have a bad marriage, not that I have a bad marriage at all, but his thing is, if you have a bad marriage, that's on you as a guy. That's your responsibility. That is not, yes, everybody has their faults, but if you want a better marriage, or you want a better this, that is on you as a guy to make that happen. You know, because look at the way society runs it. You meet a girl, you really like that girl, you chase, you go crazy, you do anything you possibly can to land that girl.
Pound your chest on top of the rock.
Do whatever you want, right?
Yeah.
Like, you'll do anything, like, to do that. Then you get the girl to marry you, right? And you're super pumped. Then you have kids. Then it goes from sharing all these crazy memories and all this fun stuff to sharing bills, sharing, like, sadness, sharing, you know, responsibility, sharing all these
stresses
different
of parenting,
stresses of parenting, and you do all that. And you, many times as a guy, we're all guilty of it. We think that being a good husband is doing basically 3 things. 1, providing. 2, being faithful, right?
Yeah.
And 3, making sure that we're a good dad and trying to help her out when you can, right? We forget that like the kids are going to leave, and when the kids leave, what did you just have to try to recreate your relationship because 18 years of parenting kind of put your relationship on pause, right? And so one thing that I'll say is fantastic for me is Justin Grable. Like, I'll give this dude props. This dude is a fantastic husband. This guy jokes around. He doesn't care all the time. He's like, he's had a divorce or two in the past, and so he's been married for now to Yarms now for a long time, and he is a really good husband. He is a really he is like, even though like I may help him at work and he helps me be a better husband because he's, he jokes around. He's like, this is my 3rd round, bro. I got this thing figured out now. He's like, I'm 13 years in. He's like, I was like, I'm only 7. So he has been such a good influence because like he'll come in my office like, get out of here, man. Get home to your wife. Get home to your kids. Nobody's going to die. You're just closing loans, dude. You're not saving lives. Like, go home. Answering it at 7:30 at night or 7:30 in the morning is not going to change his life. Go home. So, like, I think it's good that I finally have some people like him in my life that are that side of things.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because it's hard. Everybody's a yes man around you. Like, because everybody wants something. It's nice to have somebody in my life, being like, knock it off, dude. Nobody cares. Go home. Go home. So that part's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, and this business is it's a consuming business, you know what I mean? Because there's always the next task, the next thing, the next deal or whatever it might be. And it's nonstop. And so people don't realize, people from the outside look at what we do as like this, it's an easy job, but mentally and emotionally, it has its weight to it. And there's only a certain amount of bandwidth that you get mentally every single day, right? Yeah. And so if we're consumed so much to the point of breaking point, it's hard to have those nurturing relationships. So I'm glad that you're creating margins for that, man.
Yeah, and I got a really good piece of advice. Probably this Michael Koopman, who was my first mentor in the industry. And he was like, Brian, dude set a record. The guy closed 400 loans in a month.
Wow.
In 1999 when he was working for Country, 400 loans in a month, okay? Guy was just an absolute savage. But he burned himself out. He burned himself out really hard. Like so hard, had to like literally go to rehab of nervous breakdown hard because he was just burning the candle at both ends for so long. And he had a breakdown and everything else. And he gave me a piece of advice. He goes, Brian, there's something you need to know in this industry, and it'll be the difference between surviving in the industry and having a mental breakdown for you. You need, when you walk in that door every night, you forget every bad thing that happened to you that day. And you leave it at that doorstep, and you walk in, and you are your husband, you're a father. You leave that stuff on that doorstep. And I'll be honest, I'm not the best at it all the time. I mean, it's a work in progress. And I never really understood it because he told me when I was 25 and I wasn't married and I didn't have a kid. I was like, what are you talking about? I'm going to go home to myself. Like, who cares? But nowadays I see it because I know I'm guilty of it. There's days if I've had a bad day at the office, I come home and I'll notice I'm like, man, why am I fighting with my wife and kids? Because I'm bringing that home. Like, I didn't mean, I'm not intentionally doing it, but I'm irritated for something, so I'm shorter, I'm just more irritable, and it just comes, because that is, in this industry, I feel like nobody teaches you how to do that. Yeah. Nobody teaches you how to deal with all the stresses. I mean, you walk in the door, and you're just supposed to be another person, but not pretend, right?
Yeah.
It's a hard thing to do.
So have you read The 5 Love Languages?
So I have started reading that book, and I know I have not read the whole thing. What I did is it's called Audible, is like a thing on your phone, right? Yeah. So I downloaded like the Cliff Notes version of it that like gave it all to you in 30 minutes.
Typical high achiever. Just give it to me. Give me the Cliff Notes.
Give me the important facts.
I learned them all, and I was like, okay, well, I knew it. My wife's was quality time, and I knew, and that was for me, and my wife knows, like, for me, mine was always like words of affirmation. Like, I don't need somebody to like give me a bunch of gifts or do all of those types of things. But for me, like just being like from somebody, because I get a lot of like, oh, great job, but it's never for like, it's not from like the people you care to say that to, right? It's when your wife or something, and she's gotten really good at it, so she does a really great job at it. But it's one of those things where I didn't realize until you're 7 years into marriage that like it's true. It really is real. It's like literally speaking the wrong language to different people if you
Yes.
don't know their language of love.
Yes,
And
isn't that insane?
It's nuts.
I passed that book out to all these kids.
Did you? How many
Did you read
people
it? Did you read it?
Yeah.
Did you read it?
Yeah.
What's your love language? I want to know what
What's
it is. What's
yours?
yours? Mine. I'm gift giving and words of encouragement.
Gotcha.
You give me a present or a tiara. And I'll be happy. But I was married for years,
Yeah.
and it was really unfortunate because after that relationship, that's when we dove into the book and found out mine was one way and his was another. And
Yeah.
it's just, we were speaking the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah. He got me a vacuum cleaner 2 years in a row for Christmas. Yeah. That's a nice present for someone who likes presents and tiaras, isn't it? I'm like, and you're out. Yeah.
That was a deal killer.
Okay, 2 down, 1 more to go. It's either 3 strikes you're out or third time's a charm. I don't know what it's going to be. But wait, okay, so you're from Temecula. You're born?
I'm born in Chino Hills area, so I lived in Chino Hills till, 90? I was born in 82, so I was in Chino Hills till 91, and my dad and the company he worked for moved out to Murrieta in 92.
Wow.
So I've been out here since 92.
Wow.
So, yeah.
And then, so how did you meet Allison?
It's Match.com.
Really? I've actually heard
exciting.
dozens of
Yes.
successful stories
Oh,
about
yeah.
this.
Tell
us about how that went.
Oh yeah, so this is pretty awesome. So, my wife is 2 levels above me, like in terms of just hot factor. Like my wife walks into a room and she literally is going to turn every head. And I'm not one of those guys that's jealous or anything. Like I love and I'm fortunate that my wife is awesome and also really, really pretty. And so I was on Match.com and I see this like wink in my inbox and I was like, click on it and I was like, it's like,
Is that like
this
a
girl
poke?
is really, I was like, this girl's really hot, like really, really, really hot. And I was like, and I was kind of at the point in my life, I was just turning 30. So I had sowed my oats. I had, was living I had just moved back and bought a house in Orange County. I had just moved out from downtown San Diego, where I lived in Gaslamp for a couple of years and bought a house in Orange County and just moved into it. And I was like, this girl's really, really pretty. She's from Texas. I was like, because I was kind of burned out at the time. I was like, I lived in Orange County and dated in Orange County for a long time, then lived in Gaslamp, dated nothing but like people that were in the scene in Gaslamp. So I was just burned out. And so I purposely went on there because I was like, okay, I want somebody that doesn't know what I do for work, that doesn't know what car I drive, that doesn't know anything about me, that we can connect literally just through either an email or so. There was an attractive part of that aspect for me. It wasn't that like, and for her it was the same thing. She was just she lived in LA. She had, worked in lived in Texas her whole life and had won some big modeling contests in Texas and moved out after college to LA because she wanted to be in broadcast journalism. She wanted to be like an E! News reporter and things like that. So she had moved out there and was working in that industry and just, like anything else, she was having a good time dating in that scene and everything else. So she was at the same point I was, and she was just like, well, I'm not going to email the guy. So her friend at work was just like, well, he's not, you're in LA, he's down there. She was like, just like whatever it was called, I don't remember, wink or poke or just, it's like, hey, this person thought you were cute. It's pretty much like the extent of what it is. And I was like, all right, I'm not going to just wink back. I'm going to message back, And so she still has
always a salesman.
Yep. She has that first thing. And so I wrote it back and so we ended up talking and like a week later, I was like, hey, I'm going to be in San Diego. And she's like, oh yeah, I'm going to be in San Diego too, randomly enough, because she was in LA and I was in Orange County. And I was like, do you want to meet up? And she was just like, yeah, let's definitely meet up, because we were both there. I was taking a couple of the guys that worked for me, and I was taking them deep sea fishing, and we were just going to go out to a nightclub that night. And then she will never let me live it down, because I did like the ultimate like douche move where I wrote to her, I'm like, hey, by the way, just so you know, like, everybody in kind of San Diego, like, just mention my name, you'll get in anywhere or something. Horrible. Like, I look at things and like still with my buddies to this day. 'Cause when you're 28 or 29, like, you don't think and realize what an idiot you are. And then now in my late 30s, I look and I was just like, oh my God, I want to find myself and beat myself up, And so
She's like, okay.
she was like, okay, like, does he not realize that I'm a really pretty girl that lives in LA? I can kind of get in anywhere, right? Well, sure enough, it's funny because she ends up going to the nightclub where we go to, and two of the guys that run the door and own the nightclub are good. The guy that owned the nightclub lived across the hall from me, so we randomly end up being really good buddies. So she comes in, she's like, I'm here to see Brian or whatever, like, Deck or whatever. And he's like, I'll take you this way. So he like walks her in the door or whatever, her and her friend. They come down and they meet with us. And we're just we're in the middle of a nightclub. And we literally I remember we talked about like Sons of Anarchy and our dogs, all these random things in like the middle of a dance floor with just like EDM music just bouncing around us. We weren't even like, we just sitting there and talked for like 2 or 3 hours. And then we ended up going on a couple dates. And we actually, believe it or not, that was in like beginning of October of 2012, and I bought her an engagement ring in December, 2.5 months later.
Oh.
Yeah, and then proposed 3 months later.
How'd you propose?
So I'm not gonna lie, it was pretty cool. This is one of like my proud moments, not my idiot moments. So my wife, I hadn't met a lot of her family because they lived in Texas. So she brought me home for Christmas 3 months after we met, and like, so you can imagine, like, her mom and dad were like, I haven't even heard of this guy and you're bringing him home for Christmas already. Wow. Like, and they're like, they're very like all American family. They didn't live in the fast-paced scene of Orange County, right? And they, were from outside of Dallas. And so we went and met them, it was awesome. Then I flew them out to come stay with us maybe like a month before, like it's probably like around February. I flew them out, met her mom, met her dad. They stayed at our house where we live in Orange County. So obviously asked her dad to marry her. Like, it was the second time meeting again. Talk about something awkward.
Oh, but you did the right thing.
I was like, what? And I remember asking him. He was like, well, I don't know you that well, but there's nothing not to like. So yeah, you can go ahead. It was like, he was really cool about it, but it was just like, when somebody with parents live out of state, it's kind of hard, Yeah. And so it ends up, we go, and I was like, okay. So our good friends at the time, I was like, hey, let's go on like a boat parade. Like, let's go on it's like a little, you could rent a little boat in Newport Bay, and you could go around like a booze cruise, but it was like a little private booze cruise, but they decorated like all the boats in lights. It was like a parade of lights but it wasn't for Christmas. So I was like, hey babe, let's go and do this. I was like, it'll be really awesome. What she didn't know is I had contacted all of her best friends in Texas and flew them all out here. So I loaded.
Dang. Okay, yeah, you win the award for that one.
So I flew them all out here, and like her 2 or 3 of her best friends, her sister, a bunch of them, flew them out here. They were all waiting on the boat. And then a couple of like 5 or 6 of our really good friends were all on the boat already that I had like rented out. And so when we were walking down the thing, I had my brother, who's like really techie. He had made this, 8-foot by 6-foot sign that was out of wood, but it had like those Edison bulbs that spelled it like "marry me" with a question mark. So when they walked down the boat ramp, my buddies flipped on plugged the extension cord in, and it lit up across the side of the boat when we were on the dock, and dropped down to a knee and proposed. And then she got on the boat, and obviously all of her friends were there and stuff like that. So it was pretty dope.
That's like literally right out of like The Bachelor or something.
Yeah, that was good.
It was. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I had a lot of people helping me on it. Like, her sister helped, my brother helped. So it was cool. And then we ended up, we ended up finding out. So we ended up getting married, or we ended up getting engaged, and we're gonna get married. That was like, I don't know, March or something like that. But March 13th, I think, is when that was. And then we ended up deciding we're gonna get married the following April. So we go and we plan our wedding out here in Temecula at Villa de Amor, one of the wineries, or not wineries, but by the wineries out there. And then October comes, and my wife goes, we're pregnant. And I was like,
yay.
I was like, I was like, no. And she was like, I know. And we just weren't ready for it, right? Like, I mean, we just, not that we didn't want kids, but we were just like, whoa, our wedding's in 6 months. Like, we didn't see that one coming, And
well, you know how it works.
Yeah. I was like, ugh. So we were both like, okay. Well, and then we were just like, okay, wow, changes a lot, but okay, you know what? Like, we can't be bummed about this, because 1 year from now, we would be elated if this was happening, Yeah. And so we ended up moving our wedding up like 2 months, and then my wife, luckily, because my wife's like tall, she's almost 5'10", and so she didn't even, when we walked down the aisle, she was like almost 6 months pregnant, and she hadn't even popped yet. Wow. Like, so she was able to fit in her wedding gown, literally on our honeymoon, no exaggeration. When we came back from our honeymoon like a week later, belly popped. I was like, whew, I think you were willing that not to pop, you know, it's like, and then we had our daughter in June, and then a year after that, we got pregnant with our son Slater, and then, you know, he was born, and then so we literally went from meeting to getting married with 2 kids all within like 3 years.
Wow.
So it was a whirlwind, and then on top of it, you have a business that's going crazy, and so it's, you know, it was chaos. But me and her, like, we both thrive in that like chaotic, always busy, spontaneous. Like, we're not like those people that need to like plan what we're going to be doing, you know, next Thursday. That's 7 months down the road. We just kind of go with the flow of things. We like that, and so, you know, like I said, it's, you know, she's my chick. It's pretty rad.
Moral of the story.
Yeah.
Oh.
She's my chick. She's pretty rad. Got it.
Okay, are you going to have more kids?
No.
No?
You know, I think we've talked about it before, and I think if we were younger, we would consider it. I'm 37. I'm going to be 38. She's 36. She'll be 37. And honestly, her pregnancy with my son Slater, it was a hard one. Like, it was just, she was really sick, and she was adamantly against like getting help, but I worked so much, and she was so sick. Like, there was like 3 months where she couldn't even like barely get up, take care of our daughter. It was so sick. And so then she had him, and now we're like, things are kind of rocking and rolling. Like, our
You're in a
kids,
groove now.
we're in a
good
groove,
place, yeah.
you know, like both of them are potty trained. I mean, they pretty much sleep in their own beds all night. You know, we can go places and not have to bring like the strollers and the diaper bags, you know. So it's just like, and we got one of each. If we doubled up sexes, we would definitely be doing it. But I'm like, why press our luck? We got 2 healthy kids. We got our sanity, you know. And I feel like too, like, we got man-on-man coverage right now, you know, like.
That third one throws you off.
Yeah. How
Really
many do you
does.
have?
3.
Yeah.
It throws you off.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You know?
Oh my gosh, your third they're
He's
all
awesome.
so
but
great.
Jeez. And
Yeah.
but my
Funny.
wife's pregnancy with the third one was
Yeah.
very similar. Where I mean, she had to have an IV bag and stuff like that. Like, literally couldn't do anything. So that
Okay,
more.
1-to-1 coverage. What's your favorite football team?
Chargers. Die hard.
Oh,
Diehard Chargers
do you
fan.
go to the games and
Yes,
stuff?
I do. My neighbor across the street from me has season tickets. We go. I mean, we just got back. We just went to Nashville and went and saw them play in Nashville. We went when they went to Pittsburgh game. We flew last year to go when they played the Patriots in the playoffs. Like, you know, I'm a diehard. We'll get season tickets now. When they move into the new stadium, we'll get season tickets. I haven't done it yet because with you know, previously with the 1-year-old and 3-year-old or 2-year-old and 4-year-old, you just
You can
can't
get one
do
of the
games.
suites. One of the
Yeah,
nice ones.
I want to
Okay.
get one of the club level tickets. And now that I own my company, I can technically write it off. Before, I was always working for people, and it was like, okay, well, we can't go to every game, you know, and let's be real. There's not that many Chargers fans out there. They're not the easiest tickets to always sell, you know, but I'm a diehard. Are you a football fan at all?
I love football.
No.
He doesn't know that I babysit yet.
Oh yeah, she's a great babysitter.
Really?
Yeah, your kids will come back loaded with sugar and toys.
Yeah.
We want to go to Aunt Susan's house again.
Yeah.
You know?
Of course you do.
Yeah.
She doesn't say no.
No.
No,
She's the
I say
purveyor of
no.
bad ideas.
Because my boys are grown, so it's just fun to do it with other people's children.
And then hand them off.
Yeah, exactly. Get them all wired.
You know what? I don't really do that. Sometimes I mess up by accident because I just forgot because my kids are grown. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like his children, the whole house was a tent. Like we slept under the tent with screens, you know, with the chairs all lined up and made rooms and compartments. And yeah, no, if I could do life over, I would have more.
Yeah.
So I thoroughly enjoy all of your guys' children.
Yeah.
And I think that I didn't have a safe place, did I feel, to take my children when they were small. And so I'd love to be able to do that because I didn't have that.
Yeah.
So if I could give back to the world somehow like that, they might have a tummy ache from a lot of cookies, but they lived.
Yeah, that's all that matters. I know. That's right. How old are yours?
14, 12, and 9.
Okay, so you got a full house too.
Yeah.
All boys, all girls.
All boys.
All boys.
Yeah. So that's why when
Yeah.
you're telling me about the punch
Yeah.
to the groin, I was
Yeah,
like, I
you
knew
know.
I knew that was coming.
You know. Oh, you know. And it's so funny too because this is where I always laugh. Like being from a family of all boys, I didn't have any daughters. So my first one right off the bat, my wife is very girly, so my daughter is in this role called competition dance. Which, let me just tell you, bro, like, you think baseball's crazy. No. Competition dance takes over Disneyland. Disneyland. Little League Baseball doesn't take over Disneyland. And they do it twice a year for 3 days in a row. And you watch everything that you think of dance moms, like in like TV.
Yeah.
Oh, they do exist. Now, it's not the majority, but they do exist. It is a world where I look, and one of my good buddies and I love it. I mean, and it's the greatest thing for your life, because my daughter at 3 years old was getting on a stage in front of 1,000 people performing a routine. Like, that's such awesome for self-confidence and all those things that it does. But I watched my poor buddy. He's got 3 daughters, all in dance. And he's a construction, he drills concrete. He's a concrete core. So he's about as manly of a man as you can possibly get from a family of all boys. And he has 3 daughters, all in competition dance. And he just loves it. He is up there. Whoa, he's doing the dancers kind of thing. Mimicking it. Oh, and you just go and it's an awesome experience. But that my daughter just gravitated towards that. My son, I was like this weekend, I'm like, hey, do you want to go with Daddy and we want to go look at some cars? There's a car show in town. You want to go over there and look? Yeah, let's go. I was like, Kinsey, you want to come with me? No, not at all. There truly is this genetic thing that boys just like cars and punching you in the balls, and girls like dancing and playing with Daddy with makeup. Like, it's just this, like, there's no, like, you can't fight it. Now, obviously, there's one-offs and everything, but it's just so weird,
Isn't it fun, though?
I love it. I love the one of each. I do like the one of each. I'll be honest, my son, me and my wife always joke around, my son's going to be the one that like marries somebody 10 years older and lives in the pool house and is taking care of his whole life. He's just a beautiful boy, but he doesn't have he is so not materialistic. He just is whatever. I can be like, Slater, pick up your shoes or you're not going to get a cookie. It's okay. I don't need a cookie. Like, like zero. My daughter like competes at everything. Is so like, so we always say, I was like, my daughter's going to take over my business and my son will live in my daughter's casita, like it's just life, but it's fun to have that. I'm sure with your kids, I'm sure every single one of them is completely different.
Yeah, that's the joy of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right when you think you got them figured out, then they switch a tune on you and you're like, wait, where did that come from?
Yeah.
So you just never know. They're always evolving, so.
Yeah. Oh, they're imitating me. Look at that.
Yeah. So let's fast forward 60 years from now.
Yeah.
You're 98, you're on your deathbed.
Yeah.
What's the legacy of Brian Decker?
Honestly, I really would like more than anything else, and I was just funny because this comes up, like I was down in San Diego. I literally just had lunch with somebody. This came up on something kind of different, and I said, you know what? If somebody would have told me when I was 25 that you would like making other people money more than you like making money yourself, I would have been like, you are freaking crazy, right? You are absolutely insane. Right now, like my biggest thing that I want to leave as a legacy is to have given wives the ability to stay home with their kids because I've been able to help their husbands make enough money that they can support their families and create a life for their families, doing it the right way and growing things the right way. Because watching, like, I'm not gonna like say his name, but there was a guy in my office, right? And his wife and him just had a baby. And when he came and started working for me a year ago, they had just gotten pregnant. And so fast forward like 9 months, and it was always the plan that she was going to have to go back to work, right? And I can't imagine that as a mother. I'm sure that's a very hard thing. As a father, I know it's a hard thing to go back to work when you have little kids, but that's just your job. You're not going to be a stay-at-home dad for the most part, right? So it's just part of life. So I know my wife has that ability to stay home with my kids, and I see that. Not that you can't be a great mom by not doing that, but if you're afforded that opportunity, most women would want to choose that opportunity, right? Mm-hmm. So I could just tell he had his baby and everything else, and from the time he started coming, before he worked for me and what he was making till what he is making now, because his business has grown so much, he's making 3 to 4 times a month what he was making. And his wife, when they had their baby, was supposed to go back to work 6 weeks ago, and his wife walked up to my wife and was teary-eyed and was like, I just got to thank you so much for you and your husband allowing me to stay home with my kid now, because you have helped my husband at 27 years old provide for his family in a way that I don't have to go back to work again. And I get to stay home with my kid, and I don't have to go back to do that.
Yeah.
And that, for me, is like, that's all I need in the world, is to be able to give that to people, because, and so I want, if I can do that 50 more times through the health, that's the legacy I really want,
And that ripple effect of the wife staying home with the kids, and then that impact that has on those kids, and then as they go out into the world. So that's where that ripple effect of legacy really comes into play. And you never know. I hope we get to heaven and get to see that big screen. Like, oh, that's why that happened. Okay, that's cool. The full ripple effect of everything.
Exactly.
Well,
So that's a beautiful answer, man.
Yeah, exactly. Can we fast forward this part? Yeah, exactly. Oh, wow. That was a jerk at 28. Yeah.
Oh, I thought that looked so good in slow motion, but
Yeah.
it didn't.
Had to be there.
Yeah.
Well, that was a really good answer, man. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Susan, it's kind of a good interview here. So any final thoughts you'd like to add?
I just think that you're one of the most spectacular people I've ever met. And I can't thank you enough, because I have that same heart to help people, change lives, and leave some kind of legacy, but I'm old. Like, I need to get this done now. You have all these years ahead of you to do it, and it's been an honor and a privilege to just meet you, know you, see what it is you've built, be proud of that. I am an ally and a support team and a cheerleader from every angle of you, Brian Decker. And I can't thank you enough for coming alongside me in this vision and making this happen, because I know that you are responsible for a lot of this.
I appreciate
So
it.
thank you.
We got a
Thank
little
you.
left to do.
Thank you.
Of
We
course
do.
we
And
do.
I got a little bit of time, so I need us to up our game just a little bit, son.
Well, Brian, before about 45 minutes ago, I knew of the legend. I knew you as a Bigfoot creature. Everybody's looking for you and stuff like that. You've been on top of the hill. You've been number one in your industry. You are a dominating force. But it's so nice to know that you are grounded. You're going in the right direction with the family and the balance and stuff like that. And as men that are successful, that's all we can really hope to achieve. So
Appreciate that.
it's been nice to know you and get to meet you, and all be under the spotlights here at Signature Studio. And that's it for this episode of Signature Spotlight Studio with Susan Ebert, Brian Decker, John Bullard, ball guy in the red tie, saying see you in escrow. Bye.